Hello, and welcome to another installment of the Embodying Authenticity conversation that we revisit every week in the Embodying Authenticity community. And we do that to talk about what is the actual process. What is the step-by-step process of living as your authentic self? And that's what it means to me to embody our authenticity is to show up as who we really are. And there is no black and white. There is no like either, you're doing that across the board or you're not. Like it's more like, where are you already doing that? And probably there are places in your life where you feel like, yeah, when I show up there, or like when I just did, like I was really embodying my authenticity. I was really being myself. And then there are probably places where you notice that you still show up with a mask on, you still are more attuned to the reactions and emotions of other people than you are to yourself and what is real and what is true, you know? Um, and I don't even necessarily believe that the right way is to embody your authenticity and be your real self all the time in every single situation, full volume, blaring that thing. I don't know. Maybe that is right, and like you will know for you personally, like your connection to God, like your connection to source energy and infinite intelligence, you have a higher self. You have that inner authority where you know what's right for you. All I can say is that there's a self-protective survival instinct for keeping ourselves safe that is the short version of why we mask in the first place. So, whenever you feel in danger, you feel some kind of threat, there's fear associated with that threat, and you're going to put the mask on. So, to say, like, don't ever do that is like, why don't you just like uninstall your fear? It's like, okay, well, let's do some brain surgery and get your amygdala out of your mind. Like, that's what that would take. Okay. Because our most powerful, most primitive, the oldest part of our brain is that amygdala. It's responsible for our survival and it will never turn off as long as we are alive in this physical body. And so it's not necessarily about like uninstalling our fear, getting over our fear. It is truly way more about making a relationship with our fear that is conscious. Like the other day, a couple days ago, I was in a situation where I went to a wind turbine. Like I was right next to it, like just a few feet away from like the base of the wind turbine and the big, gigantic blades or whatever. And I thought it would be really cool. Like I thought this is going to be awesome, to like get to be that close to it and get to see it, and I stood underneath it and I took one look up at the blade that was coming this way, like coming towards me. And I had a panic attack. I had like a full on, like amygdala, adrenaline terror that this thing looks like it's gonna hit me. Okay. Like it's gigantic and it is coming right at me fast. And like the chemicals that got released into my body were intense. And it took several minutes, I would say, of one, not looking at it. Don't look at it. Okay. Like go back into like blinders on. We're not looking at it. Okay. Can't look at it because when I look at it, the chemicals are getting released in my body. My amygdala is like freaking going crazy. Danger, 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 chemicals, 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 fight or flight. Were you going to fight the wind turbine? You're going to run away? Like you're going to do something because that thing is coming right at you. This is like the instinctual self-protective, always scanning for danger part of the brain. That's its job. It's doing its job. And so I took it as an opportunity to do some body work around this process of making my relationship with my fear conscious. Because in my conscious awareness, like when I have access to my full brain, right? Like the leading edge of our brain with like our prefrontal cortex and like the beautiful awareness space and like understanding space, the bigger picture. Okay. When we have access to our full brain, we're aware, we're conscious, we're awake. And in that part, I knew I'm not in danger. That blade of the wind turbine is like 20, 30, 40 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, like off the ground. Like it's not even close. Like I'm 5 feet tall, okay? Like 5.5 feet tall. Like it's not even close to going to hit me, right? Like I know that logically. And still, when my eyeballs looked at the blade, my amygdala flushed me full of fear chemicals. And so I stood there and brought it all together in the conscious awareness of, I know I'm not in danger. And I know because I've practiced it, because I sought out, you know, programs and coaches to help teach me. And then I did the practicing and I still do the practicing. And the story is another example of like doing the practicing, doing the body work, doing the embodiment of building this conscious relationship with my fear. Like I know how to soothe my body on purpose. I know how to signal safety inside of myself on purpose. And you do that with your breath. And like that's all, that's it. That's all it takes because when you're flushed full of the fear chemicals, your breathing changes. It becomes really shallow. And again, it's like preparing those like quick inhalations that will let you run away or like fight or whatever. Like you're under stress in that moment and your breathing gets really shallow. And so when you leave your breathing in a really shallow place, it's like you're agreeing that yes, need to fuel the fight or flight. Okay. Versus if you can come into conscious awareness through this conscious relationship with your fear, through being aware and knowing that I am not in danger. This is not a threat. I am okay. I am okay. I'm safe. Even though this thing looks really scary, I am safe. And so if you can get there, all you got to do is take deep breaths. Deepen your breathing. There's something, right? Our biology is wired that like when you're breathing out of the top part of your lungs, like you're getting these short little bursts versus like if you will breathe deeply down into the bottom part of your lungs and expand your lungs down into your belly, you are overriding your amygdala. You're asking it to please calm down. You're okay. You're okay. We're just taking deep breaths. We're taking a really deep inhale, as deep as you can, right? Because at the beginning, like you're basically hyperventilating and taking a deep breath can be challenging. But like if you will on purpose, take as deep of a breath as you can. And like to even practice it just in this moment, like see about how deep down into your lungs do your inhales go? And when you breathe, is your chest rising? Because if it is, then that means the air is mostly in the top part of your lungs, that's what's expanding versus is your stomach pushing out? Because if your stomach is pushing out, then that's the bottom of your lungs getting the oxygen and that's the process that soothes your amygdala, that quiets it back down, that ends the fear on purpose. Okay. And so get this. So I do that. Takes a few minutes, easy peasy, which goes along exactly with what I've heard repeatedly, and the number varies just a little bit, but that like an emotion will last 60 to 90 seconds if it's not re-triggered. Okay. And so, like the chemicals, like the rush of chemicals that get released in your body with the emotion, like that terror that I felt and the release of chemicals that it gave me, This body's just a chemical factory. It's a beautiful thing when you can like really get in there and understand your own chemistry and use it to your advantage, because we're not gonna do brain surgery and take out our amygdala. So like let's just figure out how to like really ride this wave by soothing and signaling safety to our body on purpose. And so I do that, and I bring myself back to a regulated place, and I think to myself like, okay, so like I'm safe. So like let me take a glimpse, let me take a peek at one of these blades again. Like, let me try to look at it. Let me, like, put my eyes back up there, because this whole time I'm like literally like blinders on. Like, I can't look at that because of the rush of chemicals that it's giving me. And so I looked back, same thing, instant panic attack, instant. So I did it again. So I did the soothing, and I on purpose again, I breathed deeply down into the bottom of my lungs, and in a few minutes, my body is calm. Okay. And at that point, I took my glasses off because I'm like nearly blind without my glasses. Like everything just like blurs back into like a color if it's big enough to have a color. Sometimes it's too small to have a color. And it just disappears completely. So very blind. And I thought that like if I take my glasses off, that I won't be able to see the blades, right? Like that maybe they'll just disappear. It was a full moon. It was 2 days ago. It was like an almost full moon, and the blades are white, and they were absolutely catching the moonlight. And so after I took my glasses off, I still accidentally looked and saw one of the blades. And that time, the rush of chemicals that happened was not as intense. Like there was a noticeable lessening of the intensity of the fear. And I believe, right? Like I don't know what evidence we would have or what proof we would have, but like I believe that that third time that it happened, that like the rush of chemicals was released, that my conscious awareness and programming of like, I am safe. This is not dangerous. Like I was convincing myself little by little those first couple times. And the third time that it scared me a lot less. And I didn't look at it again after that because I was like, I don't like this. For whatever reason, like my body just like isn't having this. Okay. But it's a pretty cool experience of getting to be in a situation where I know I'm safe and my body is terrified. Okay. And think about if you have a story like that, like where you felt danger, but you knew that it wasn't dangerous. And, was there a pause in there where you were able to soothe yourself on purpose, where you were able to comfort your own fear? Because the amygdala is largely unconscious. Like fight or flight, it's unconscious. Like we're not making a choice when we fight or flight. We're defending ourselves. We're in pure instinct mode. And so to breathe deeply on purpose, to soothe our fear on purpose, we are having to wake ourselves up from a nightmare. Like I felt terror, panic, like just intense. And the instinct to cover my eyes was adorable, was like so freaking funny, because like it wasn't a choice. Like cover my eyes, like freeze flight ish, and like just don't look at the scary thing. And that instinct of avoid it, that instinct of like disconnect from the scary thing. And I want to take all of this, okay, and wrap it around our shadow and the parts of ourselves that we maybe don't like as much as other parts. And that's a sliding spectrum, right? Like if you have some parts of you that you love and that you think are just like the best, and then you have some parts where you're just kind of like meh, like then those are the parts where I'm talking about. Or maybe you have parts where you like actually hate it. where you like actually despise and seek to destroy certain parts of yourself, where you judge it as wrong or bad and that it shouldn't exist. Some of us have parts like that, and maybe you do and maybe you don't. Again, you'll know for yourself how this applies. But when we see the scary part, when we see the part that we don't like or that we think shouldn't exist, we drop into, or the amygdala comes to life. We see the danger, we see the threat of this piece of ourselves that we don't want. And there can be so many different instincts, right? Like we're in fight or flight at that point. And do you cover your eyes and go into avoidance and disconnection from self, or do you go into fight and you go into like self-sabotage mode, self-punishment mode, um which is another form of self-disconnection, just in a slightly more active way. But basically what I want to do with all of this is wrap it in this radical acceptance and self-compassion. Okay. And that, like, it's all allowed to be there. And I don't just mean the part of you that you don't like or that you like less than the other parts. I also mean the part of you that doesn't like it, the part of you that wants to destroy part of yourself, like the part of you that wants to punish you. It's allowed to be there. Like it's like the brain surgery comment. Like we're not gonna get it to go away by denying its existence. Like one of the teachers that I really love, Alyssa Nobrega, she says, like, if you want to keep something, either judge it or, oh dang it, avoid it, I think is like how that goes. But it's like basically pushing against it. Like when you resist it, you're getting to keep that thing. And when you accept it, when you can find compassion and love and maybe even empathy for these different parts, and you can like really sink into the psyche of those parts, like for example our punisher, the part of ourselves that seeks to destroy another part of ourselves. Like that's an easy part, that's a violent part to, like, it's an easy part to be scared of or reject or see as bad or wrong, like that you shouldn't be self-sabotaging, you shouldn't be self-punishing. And again, I don't know what is right, I don't know what is good and what is bad. Okay. um all I know is that what is what is real in that moment. Okay. And so if it's there, if it's present, then it's valid and it deserves to exist. It's a part of the puzzle. It's a thread in the tapestry. And we can practice bringing acceptance and compassion to all parts of ourselves. And I want to specifically talk about, avoidance and disconnection and numbing and, tuning out of the scary, painful thing. Okay. And all of this to kind of like sum up and as like coping mechanisms. Okay. Which is already a more compassionate word than numbing. Like there's a lot of like negative, heavy, judgmental connotation around concepts like numbing and self-medicating. Okay. As far as like, there's like a weakness or like a vulnerability in it that like you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be numbing yourself. You shouldn't be like medicating yourself. Like this kind of like iceberg of energy that comes across in those kinds of labeling. And so already to shift from thinking about it like numbing, avoidance, disconnection, let's take that concept and we'll put it here as far as like that's one level of looking at it. Let's call that the first floor. And let's take the elevator up to the second floor and let's call it coping. Let's really zoom out just one little bit more and look at the wave of what's coming as far as the intensity of the emotion, right? This chemical factory that we're always contained within. When you have a thought, when you sense something from your environment and your brain makes a conclusion, makes a judgment, a rush of chemicals is released. And sometimes it feels really good, and sometimes it's a panic attack, and there's a whole range of gray in between. And so when we sense the what's coming, and we have the reaction, we have the chemical reaction of that perception. Coping is about, based on the rush of chemicals, there's the part that you can tolerate in your system. There's the part that you have the capacity to handle, that you can feel it. Okay. And there's, so like out of the whole thing, there's the part that you can handle and there's the extra. Okay. And sometimes the sensation is smaller than what you can handle. What you can handle is this big, and what sensation it is this big. And in that sense, you don't need to cope with anything. It's not required. Your capacity can handle it. Coping is what happens when what is triggered within our chemical factory is bigger than our capacity to hold it. Okay. And in that gap, in that deficit of capacity, is coping. And coping comes in all forms and flavors. Okay. Because, for example, in my story about the wind turbine, my instinct to cover my eyes and stop looking at it, that was a coping mechanism. That, like, by instinct, like my body automatically coped with this panic, this terror, by stop the perception, stop looking at it. Okay. So disconnect, avoid, don't look at it, put your blinders on. That's a coping mechanism. Okay. And its purpose, its function, this is where we're bringing in the compassion to like really understand like that this is a useful thing, that our body just knows how to do that. I didn't have to like be in my panic attack and like strategize, how am I going to help myself? Oh my gosh, what do I even do? Meanwhile, I'm like filling full of all of these fear chemicals like stress and adrenaline, and like, oh my God, it was intense. No, just like right away. Like, I mean, I looked at that for less than a second, like a split second before my hands covered my eyes because I couldn't take it. I couldn't take how scary it was. Coping. I can't take this. It's too scary. So I cover my eyes. So I avoid. So I numb the experience. I reduce the sensory stimuli of the experience by removing my sight. I'm not going to look at that. Coping. Okay. It's loving to ourselves that our instincts for self-preservation will guide us to coping in the ways that work best based on where we are and what we're experiencing and our unique path and our soul's mission and our karma and our destiny, and all kinds of factors guide the ways that each of us individually cope with our chemical factory, these bodies that we're riding around in. And so, another example of this, and I'm going to leave you with this example, and then we're going to listen to a song that I think is going to be really beautiful. I'll talk a little bit more about that before I play it. But the other small example that I want to take this up a notch further. Okay, so like we started on the first floor with like numbing and self-medicating and avoidance and all of the negative connotation that entails. And we added compassion to it by moving to the second floor and thinking of it as coping and really understanding that there's a bigger play here of the experience and our capacity. And when the experience is bigger than our capacity, we're going to need support. We're going to need something to fill that gap. That makes total sense. Let's take it up to the third floor. And I want to talk about scabs. Okay. And just for even a second, like feel the feeling of the word scab. Okay. Like it's gross. It's like just not appetizing. Okay. Like at least for me, like the word scab evokes this kind of like ew kind of feeling. Maybe yours is different. Maybe you already love scabs. And recently I fell in love with scabs. And I'm talking like you got a cut on your arm and it makes a scab kind of thing. And the reason was because I had an open wound on my body that formed and that was like very painful, extremely painful, open, raw, just pure nerve endings exposed, like no barrier. And oh my God, so painful. And within a day or two, a scab formed on top. And the wound with the scab on it still hurts. Okay. Like it's still painful. The scab didn't eliminate all the pain, but the scab, that barrier, that protective barrier, it reduced the pain by like 70% just by being on there. Okay. Just by being like, I'm going to cover this up. We're not going to look at it. We're not going to let it just be open to the environment. Like, we're going to protect it. And this is another way of looking at coping. Okay. Is that this is the protective barrier. This is the part that is us being able to be with our experience, us being able to like capacitate our life. And if you took away every single person's coping mechanisms, if you ripped off all the scabs off all the wounds, everyone on earth would be writhing in all consuming pain because open wounds are intensely painful. And when you are in that kind of intense pain, it's all consuming in your awareness. Like there's no room for anything else. There's no room for love or compassion or curiosity or creativity. There's just wishing it would end. And that's it. And so that level of intensity of pain, like if you've ever heard the phrase hurt people, like if we go around ripping off all of our scabs, if we start trying to cut off all of our coping mechanisms, and leave those wounds just opened and exposed, the chances of us getting lost in that intense pain and stumbling into a situation unconsciously where we are inflicting pain onto other people, like pain just takes over the planet without coping, without scabs, without that numbing process that takes the edge off, that takes the part away that you cannot handle, right? And so like the self-compassion, the radical self-acceptance of knowing what your capacity is, knowing what can you handle, and when are you getting close to the threshold, the limit of what you can handle, and when are you beyond what I need to disconnect from this. I can't handle this. And that disconnection, that numbing, that avoidance, it's not forever. You know, it's about also like what do you do in the meantime? Because the scab that forms on the open wound, it's not just like sitting there. Like underneath, there's a process happening, a process of healing. And that's really where we go to the fourth floor and we come to healing. Okay. And wrapping all of this numbing and coping and disconnection and avoidance, and we wrap it all in a healing journey. And for me, healing means loving, right? Like when we are healing something, we are learning how to love it. We are stretching our capacity of love to be able to meet whatever the thing is. And so when we're thinking about this through the lens of healing, underneath the scab, there's a healing process going on. There's a there's a renewal and a rebirth and a regrowth that's going on. There's a re-strengthening that's going on. And that is a beautiful thing for many reasons, but the main point that I'm struck by in this is how unconscious it is. How, like, when you have a scab and there's a wound underneath, are you sitting there like making sure to carve out time every day to like heal that thing? No, your body knows how to do it. Your body will do it naturally when there is not interference. And the scab is about preventing interference, right? Like when you have an open wound and then it gets bumped and it's like now it's bleeding again. It like opens back up. And so like the scab is like it's protecting it and it's keeping it covered and quiet and still so that the healing process that's natural can take place. And so when we look at all of this through the lens of healing, it's like we can do ourselves a massive favor by bringing some compassion and acceptance to our coping mechanisms, to the ways that we numb ourselves, and giving ourselves a break from, I should be doing this differently or better or whatever the case is, and allowing the healing process that will naturally happen when you numb, when you take the edge off, when you do your coping thing. Like, there is a healing process that's underway. Okay. And let it happen. Let it happen, because the thing about scabs is that when the wound underneath is healed, it falls off. There's nothing to hold it on there anymore because there's only fresh, new, clean skin underneath. And a scab doesn't need to stay on that. It can't hang on to that. So when we no longer need to cope, we won't have that coping mechanism. And so rather than fighting the coping mechanism, rather than trying to cut off the bad habit or whatever judgmental conclusion we've reached about it, instead of dealing with the coping mechanism, let's think about the healing process that's underway. Let's think about the pain of this tidal wave of experience, like let's think about this gap of like the experience is bigger than your capacity to hold it. And we can come at that from, having compassion for the experience. We can come at that from upgrading our coping mechanisms. Like instead of eating a gallon of ice cream, let's go to therapy. These are both coping mechanisms. One of them, eating a gallon of ice cream, is probably more on the self-destructive end of the spectrum, which is not a judgmental thing. It's just more looking at like the data of when you go to therapy, especially if you find a really good fit with your therapist and the kind of energy work that goes on in that space. When you really get something that clicks, I mean, we're talking about now going back on the side of capacity and building your capacity, right? Like your capacity to be with the thing, which is like, I think what got demonstrated in the story with the wind turbine of like my capacity to be with this perceived to be dangerous experience of the wind turbine. My capacity to be with it got bigger, even in the span of like 15 minutes. It got less scary. So our capacity can grow. It can grow every single day. And so that's where I think it pays to be proactive. It pays to engage in self care practices like journaling or therapy or being in community with safe people or going for walks in nature or earthing and grounding your body, snuggling your pets, your animals, like being around your loved ones. Like these kinds of nurturing, nourishing experiences will grow your capacity. And so engaging in just even 10 minutes of that every day, if not more, but like just set yourself a real low bar and be like, I built my capacity today. And like if you're watching this video right now, like this video built your capacity today. And so as we grow our capacity and as we don't leak our energy in beating up on ourselves for the ways where we're not big enough yet to handle whatever experience it is. Like, instead of beating up on ourselves for being afraid and numbing and disconnecting and avoiding, have compassion for why it is that we do that and recognize that that's the way you're supporting yourself being with your experience. And so I want to end with a song that is called Water and Sky by Sam Garrett and Ajeet. And I'll post a link to this because it's a lyric video if you want to check it out or listen to it a million more times, which I wouldn't be surprised. Um, but this exemplifies this radical self acceptance and self compassion. And if you listen to it through the lens of the relationship between you and you, the relationship between you consciously and you unconsciously, the relationship between your light side, your divinity, and your humanity, your shadow, your darkness, your pure animal instincts, right? Like, there's the parts that we really love and there's the parts that we like less than that. And so let this song be a conversation between the two. I hope you enjoy, and we will sign off when we're done listening. Thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear your comments down below, share your reflections, your thoughts. If this brought you any extra compassion, I would love to hear that. Until next time, I do hope that you'll take such good care of the beautiful one that you are, and so will I.